Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evolve, where we focus on the evolution of leadership. And I'm Kim Ford, your host, and I'm really excited to have a very special guest here today. Do you mind taking a second to introduce yourself and your company?
Sure, thanks so much. My name is Heather Hansen, and I'm the founder of a company called Global Speech Academy, which is based in Singapore. So, my story is I started out born and raised in California and went to school in California, university in California. And then the minute I graduated, I moved to Denmark to be with my then boyfriend, now husband. It does have a happy ending. People are always a little concerned when they hear this story. It did end well. But I moved to Denmark and I just celebrated 20 years abroad this year. So I've spent 8 years in Denmark, 12 years in Singapore, have my business here. My children were born here. And really, my whole life has led up to what I do. From high school age, where I was already doing competitive speech and debate and was named All-American in public speaking, won scholarships, all of that stuff. My life was around communication is what I loved from as long as I can remember. And then when I did move to Singapore the first time in '06, that was the first time I actually learned that I could make a business out of speaking, that I could be a speaker and trainer and share knowledge in that way. And I had a certificate in teaching English. My university education is in international studies, language and society, as well as a German language degree. Plus then I had picked up Danish fluently. So always very interested in language and communication. And so that's when I started my company here in Singapore and have been working with top leaders in multinational organizations for the last 15 years, helping them to speak up, to speak clearly and confidently, and get their messages across well when they're managing and leading their teams. So truly the love of my life is, as well as the Great Dane, is my business and my love of communication.
Oh, that's awesome. It's so funny, the pandemic for many companies, many leaders, it's changed so much. And
It
how
really
has the
has.
pandemic affected professional communication?
Ooh, how has it not affected it is probably a better question.
Yeah. Well,
I
you and
mean,
I are talking, right? And you're in Singapore and I'm
yeah,
in Pittsburgh, and
yeah,
it's amazing that we can do
I
this, and
know.
it's nighttime for you and morning for me.
And I feel like I'm sitting right there with you,
Yeah.
and I think we had this capability before,
Mhm.
but we didn't really utilize it in the same way. It was all, oh no, it'll never be the same, and we can't, and how could we possibly? And then we were forced, and there was no turning back. And we realized, actually, wait a second, maybe we can do this. And wait, you mean I can cut my commute? And wait, I can actually have contact with my regional team on a daily basis instead of once a quarter when we fly them in, and we can standardize our training and development across the entire region or globe. These were all things that we were thinking weren't possible before, and now we found that actually we can do a lot more than we ever thought we could. And I think although it's been difficult, there's been a big learning curve. It's been very difficult for us to talk into the black hole of the camera, to
Yeah.
make eye contact, and all of these good things.
To use our
But
hands,
yeah,
to force ourselves to have them.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so there's definitely been a steep learning curve, but I think we've all done a pretty good job of helping each other through that. And we are learning how to navigate this and finding out that there are some things that we could do even better in this type of space, that we're able to be in some cases more inclusive than before because the speed of our conversations has slowed. We know who's off camera and on mute and who needs to unmute. And Joe, could you please contribute? What are your ideas here? And so in some ways it's made our communication better. In other ways, of course, there are many people who still feel very uneasy, still want the face-to-face, want that personal touch and contact. But I think with time, we're going to get even more used to this way of communicating. We
Yeah.
don't have a whole lot of choice, it
Yeah,
seems.
it's interesting. I was at an event a couple weeks ago, and a couple investor friends of mine said that what's really great about what's changed for them is now that they can meet a bunch of startups in a day, when typically they'd only be able to meet like three. And the reason why is because they'd have to drive or they'd have to fly
Yeah,
in. And now
yeah.
it's so much easier. They're like, it's really improved their workflow and their business environment because they
Mhm.
can get in front of and have these meetings back to back without commutes. Um,
Exactly.
And I'm one of those people that I'm okay with some things. Like, this is a great opportunity. You and I would never meet if it wasn't for this. But at the same time, when it comes to clients, like I really do in many ways, at least Pittsburgh-based clients, I miss that personal connection. So I guess what I call the best of both worlds is now, a lot of times we'll do that initial meeting over the phone, but then, maybe we can go tour their space, we meet them in person, and it's great. Now we have that, we have the best of both worlds. So we do get to spend time with them because there is some things that we need to see in person. But at the same time, a lot of those meetings that we used to have to spend an hour driving there, and being early
Yeah,
and preparing, and then an hour
exactly.
back, and we'd lose half of our day for
Exactly.
one
Yeah.
meeting, and now we
Yeah.
don't. So I
Hmm.
don't know. For me, we can control that. So I think one thing that's been really helpful is we've tried to create our environment behind us. So this isn't what our clients see. We have another room that's a big, huge cafe that they can kind of see throughout the office when we're on a call
Yeah.
with them. I think for us, making that experience for the client on the other side of the camera as good as we can make it. So having
Right.
really good audio and video, I think
Hmm.
that's where companies, like from my perspective, are really lacking. I mean, this microphone
Hmm.
is it really inexpensive.
Yeah,
Get
it's so
one.
easy
It
to
makes
do
a
little
difference.
things that make a
Yeah.
big difference, that just lift the standard, right?
Yeah.
And at the beginning, we were just happy we could figure out how to get our camera working. But now we're
Yeah.
2 years in.
Yeah. This it's not
Things
that difficult.
are,
And there's
it's not hard. And I think
yeah.
the expectations are a little bit higher now, especially at the higher corporate levels, and especially for external communication. So
Yeah.
my clients who are representing the company at online conferences and virtual events, it's important. And a lot of my clients too have started, building green screen rooms in the office
Yeah.
so that they're ready. And a lot of
Yeah.
them were doing that during the pandemic as well, so that they could appear at a professional level. So I think we're over the hump where we're being super forgiving of people who can't figure out how to get their microphone working. We expect that you have the basics down.
I don't
And
know. I had somebody last week that I couldn't hear. So, you also get pretty good at helping them, be a
yeah, you do.
troubleshooter. Hey, hit
Yeah,
the
you
three
do.
dots,
Exactly.
it's pretty
Exactly.
funny. We just have to laugh together.
Yeah,
Question
yeah.
for you. I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between communication skills and social skills. And for me, I guess I think we all communicate, right? But I think being social, like, is night and day. Like, I'm not somebody, I absolutely can't stand making small talk with people, like going out
Mm,
to a networking event and having to talk to strangers. I mean, I'm a very outgoing, but
mm,
I still hate it. Like, I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about your shoes. I have no desire. I don't want to hand you a business card. Like, now I want to get to know you. So, like,
mm.
tell me, what are the differences? Are they the same?
That's a really interesting question. And when you bring it up that
Yeah.
way, that's quite interesting because when I think of communication versus social
Yeah.
skills is really just interpersonal communication. Communication can just be me delivering information or giving instructions or, just it's point A to point B. But the social skills is, do I know how to deliver that information with empathy? Or do I know how
Mm,
to influence while I'm communicating? Do I know how to read the energy of the room? Do I understand the humans that I'm interacting with? So the social skills has a human element to it that is interpersonal.
okay.
Whereas communication, in my mind, could be delivering any kind of it's just information delivery
Yeah.
communication. Did the message get from point A to point B? But the social skills take some human element there. But I can see, you're putting like small talk and stuff like that under the social skills, which, yes, I guess it would be
Yeah.
as well. But, we have social skills, soft skills, communication skills. I don't think any of them exist without the other. So we need elements of all of that, I think, in our communication.
Can you
But whether or
train
not,
somebody? Can you train somebody to read the room better? Is that something, like, to me, that's like you either have that knowledge, but I would
yeah.
assume you can get better. But I've worked with people, I'll never forget, a long time ago in my career, we were in a meeting and we had a binder and we'd flip through and give our presentation. And the CEO actually fell asleep at the meeting. He fell asleep. He had his arm like this and he fell asleep. And the person delivering the message, I wasn't delivering. I'm just looking at him like, do you not see what's going? And he just kept
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
And I actually started, like, kicking him underneath the table. Like, are you not realizing that like what we're saying
He's
isn't
falling
working.
off his chair.
Yeah. And so like it was one of those things like I don't know that he actually ever, now looking back, I mean, I was really young. Now looking back, I just don't know that he had those. You would consider those, I assume, social skills where you adjust. And so for me, I don't actually walk into a room with a planned, I mean, I have backup data that if there are people that like pictures and more of a visual learner, I can pull them out, but I like to have a conversation and I like
Yeah.
it to be about them, not about me. And that was not what I was taught. Does that
Mm.
make what I
Oh,
was taught to
interesting.
be about us? Like, here's
Yeah.
what we're going to do, period. And
Uh-huh.
instead, I just listen to them and figure out how I can solve the problems or try to find where the problem is. And I don't know that anybody taught me that.
Mm.
So, like, is that something that you can
I
train
think you're
people to
better. I
get
think
better
you're
at?
better at the social skills than you think. Of course, that isn't the small talk element,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
but
just
yeah,
leave out the small talk.
yeah. Well, I think that I believe it starts in self-awareness,
Okay.
and I think and that's the part that I think can be taught by having people become a bit more self-aware. I think now the big buzzword around this is self-leadership as well. But becoming more self-aware around who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, and how you are different from other people. Because if you don't understand yourself, then it's very difficult to start understanding others. And once you can start understanding others, how they're different from you, that's how you start to learn how to present a message or influence another individual who is different from you. So I believe it really does start with the self-awareness. And maybe some of us are just a bit more self-aware than others, or have been in more situations where we learn to be flexible. I think travel and my years abroad have, where you are constantly interacting with people who are different, cultures that are different, constantly having your preconceived notions
Oh, yeah.
challenged. And that's when I think you really start to learn a lot about yourself, even more than the other culture you're experiencing. You learn a lot about yourself and what's important to you. And that helps you to start understanding others that, okay, he's starting to fall asleep. I better change my tact. Or you realize maybe it isn't about me and he's got a newborn at home and I just really need to kind of wake him up and ask him like, hey, I think people get really scared in these situations, like freeze. What do I do? I'll just drone on because I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to
Yeah.
handle it.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a lot that we can do to improve these skills. Learning how to have more empathy, learning to think of others. It sounds like it comes quite naturally to you, but for a lot of people, it
It's
doesn't.
hard.
And
Yeah.
and it is really hard. And I mean, if you take it even a step further to think about people who are neurodivergent, this is one of the big challenges they have in the workplace because the way that they relate and interact with others doesn't necessarily meet the expectation of a neurotypical person in the workplace. And so they're also trying to learn how to interact in a way that meets the expectation. And then on the opposite side, neurotypical are able to be more understanding and empathetic and realize what's going on. But it takes such a higher level of awareness that we need to bring to the table. And I think a lot of us are just kind of lazy going through our work life, just trying to get the message from A to B without considering all of that social element, human element that is involved with transmitting the message. So, I
Hmm.
mean, it's a really excellent question you bring up. I mean, it really makes me think a lot because, yeah, how much are we involving ourselves and others in that message transfer?
Yeah.
Because that's what I think real communication is, meaningful communication in any case, right?
Yeah, I love it when I go into a meeting with a team and sometimes I'll challenge a team and say, hey, I would love to know your feedback at the end of the meeting today on when you think the light went off or if it never goes off. Like, I love challenging people that because to me, I always look for that pivoting moment where something we did resonated with them, something
Yeah.
made sense, something hit a switch. And for me, even when, again, the CEO is falling asleep, in that concept, I always look at sports. I've always played sports. So for me, if I continue to hit the forehand up the line and it's not effective, it's not working, I continue to hit that out, I have to pivot, right? If
Yeah.
not, I continue to do the same thing expecting different results. And so I look at it in the same as a business meeting. If I'm doing something and it's not working, I feel like I'm on the court and I have to pivot
Mhm.
and do something different to no matter what, figure out a way to get that switch to go off, that light to go off.
Mhm.
And I love
Absolutely.
it because I love I can walk into a meeting with multiple people, from my team, and we all hear different things. I'm like, all of us take notes, and that's all then summarize what we thought they said. And it's amazing. Like all of us thought something completely different. Like, how did we go to the same meeting and not
Yeah, were we in
like,
the same room?
and I think a lot of times it is the way it's communicated. It's the way that the message is delivered and received, and we all perceive it differently. So which makes us it's frightening because if we think we're delivering it one way,
Mhm.
how is it really being received on the other end? And it's where
Exactly.
you could probably get into a lot of trouble, or you wonder why it's not working, right?
Right. And we put so much, it brings up another point because we put so much emphasis on the speaker's presentation, the way the message is created, training the speaker to speak well, to improve their communication skills. We're always so focused on the speaker when really the example you're sharing is just the proof of how differently we receive messages. And yet we very rarely are focused on the listeners and how they are receiving the message,
Yeah.
right? So what is their cultural perspective?
Right.
What's the impact of that on the way they're hearing the message? Or are they taking something personally? Or is something triggering for them? Or what has their life experience brought them to that then makes them hear the message slightly differently? So I love that idea, though, of having your team walk out and say, okay, so what did you hear? What did you hear? What did you hear?
Yeah.
Because it just goes to show how important the listening side is, that it really doesn't matter what the speaker does, people are going to react and respond in different ways. And
Yeah.
we probably need to be spending a little bit more time there, figuring out our audience, knowing how we can resonate with them better, how they might respond, and making things more of a conversation, right? Because how do you know how they're responding or what they're thinking if you're droning on for 20 minutes with no stop and the
Right.
guy's falling asleep, right? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest shifts that we're seeing in presentations, right? Is
Yeah.
this move away from the orator that we were taught back in school in speech and
Yeah.
debate, of droning on, and then changing it to this more informal back and forth. We're all adults. Let's all contribute to this conversation and see what we can build. And I think that's a really welcome change. I
Right.
love that about the shift in the way we're communicating now. And I think it's going to go further that direction as well.
Yeah. In your TED talk, you mentioned bad English. What does that mean?
So, yeah, that's a great question. I talk about bad English and I bring that up because there is no such thing as bad English. There's no such thing as good English. There's no such thing as bad English. There is just English and communication. And we are defining the language and the way that we use it in every single conversation. We're negotiating meaning in every single conversation. But the reason I talk about bad English is it's one of the number one reasons people come to me for help. Heather, I have such bad English. People don't understand me. I have such bad English. I'm not sure about the right words. I'm such bad English. It just doesn't flow. And they think that their English is horrible. And these are people who are born and raised speaking English. They could be native, non-native. But even here in Singapore, English is an official language. They have a Singapore variety of English. Everyone speaks it fluently. Businesses in English, governments in English, education's in English. And they'll come to me and say, no, I speak bad English. And it's like, well, how do you define that? Because I understand you just fine. You're, top level in a multinational company. You seem to be doing great, right? But they feel that there's a bias towards the way they sound, the way they speak. And it is a very real bias. I was lucky to be born into a very prestige accent globally, a very general American, California, what they hear in the movies, what they're hearing on YouTube. And when I go international, everyone understands me and they respect my accent because it says a lot about where I'm from and my place in the world. Well, very different for a Singaporean who goes to America, right? They're going to have to do 10 times as much as I do to get the same kind of respect. So, and that's
Yeah.
not just a native, non-native. I mean, think of someone from the South, think of someone from
Yeah.
Boston, New Jersey,
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting there
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, right? So,
Yeah,
uh,
Pittsburgh. And what's so funny is people think we have a very unique accent in Pittsburgh, and we make different words come out very strange. And people will hear it and know, oh, you're from Pittsburgh. And but the problem in this market is it's such a small city that if you're not from here, you don't have that ingrained relationships. Like you're not really welcome. It's unique. I mean, people are friendly, but they're friendly, but that's it, right? You can't really break through. It's just a
uh-huh.
tougher market because we don't have a lot of people coming in. It's kind of like when you're born here, you might leave for a little while, but you come back.
And it's
So
funny
it's tough.
because the minute someone opens their mouth, you know, right? You
Oh,
know
oh,
if they
you know, from
belong or if
Pittsburgh.
they don't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. And those are some really invisible lines that are in our communication. Whether you're only dealing with other Americans or you're dealing internationally, we have these biases that we've been born and raised with, you know, from everything from Disney films. And if you think of the accents that are used for different characters, for in action movies, all of the villains, you know, I was raised on Indiana Jones. All the bad guys are Russian, German, you know, and depending on our geopolitical landscape, those accents will change. And so we've been taught from a very, very young age through cartoons, through movies, through media, through, you know, who are our politicians, who are our broadcasters, how do they sound? But we're taught from a very young age what are good and bad accents to have
Yeah.
and where it will get you. And it's the same with language globally. Who speaks the good English? Who speaks the bad English? Well, there is no good and bad. These are all ideas that we've made up in order to
Mhm.
draw our tribal boundaries of who is in the in crowd and who is not. And that is seriously affecting business as well. It plays out in hiring decisions and promotions. That's why people come to me. They say, and HR doesn't even hide it. It's like they need better communication skills. We can't promote them if they can't speak more clearly and fix their accent. And it's like, well, what's wrong with their accent? You know, you can
Mhm.
understand everything that they're saying. It's not an understanding issue. It's a PR issue. It's a, we don't think he represents us well. We don't want him representing us because of the way he sounds. And that is pure discrimination. And
Oh,
yet it's
absolutely.
probably, yeah, and it's probably the last really acceptable form of discrimination that we have. And it's very closely linked to racism, which we would never allow. We would never say, well, I don't want this Indian man representing my company. But we can easily say, oh, I don't think, you know, his accent, people might not understand him. And it's really difficult. And da da. No, that's not exactly what's going on. Everyone understands him. That's not the problem. So this is something that is just beginning to be talked about,
Yeah.
barely
Yeah.
in organizations. It's usually like a side note or a little piece of an unconscious bias training that's just barely talked about because nobody really understands or knows about it. And I've kind of lived it on both sides of the equation, having that kind of bias towards me when I was speaking Danish. You know, people saying, "Oh, your accent's so charming. Oh, that's so cute how you say that." We're in a business meeting. You wouldn't dare say that to me if I was speaking English right now. Like, you would not dare. So why is it okay when I'm speaking Danish? And so I felt that lack of respect for my ideas. And even though the people absolutely mean nothing by it, they don't mean to be hurtful, they don't mean to be non inclusive. And the intent is not to hurt me in any way. But that is the result. It is the
Right.
result that I am held back, that I'm not accepted, that my ideas are not taken seriously. And this is happening to millions of people all over the world every single day in offices everywhere, in all different languages. It isn't an English thing. It happens in every single language, in every office, in every meeting. So it's something for us to start thinking about. But that's why I like to talk about the bad English, because no one has bad English. It has,
Right.
again, a lot to do with the listener. Are they recognizing accent? Do they know how to tune their ear? Are they taking the effort to try to understand, or are they dismissing you because you sound different? And I mean, I think that's great. You know, your own personal story in Pittsburgh could be because you know exactly how this plays out in real
Yep.
life.
Oh, for
And it's
sure.
very real, very real. But something that we need to start talking about a lot more in diversity and inclusion programs, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned hiring, and hiring has changed.
Oh,
How has,
yeah.
I'd like to hope we're on the other side of the pandemic. Let's just hope we are, right? What priorities have changed in hiring C-suite leaders right now?
Well, I think that actually goes back full circle to your first question that you raised around the social skills. And I mean, I know just recently, it might even be in the current Harvard Business Review, this July, August
Yeah.
one. There was just recently an article all about how the hiring has changed to focus on the social skills. That's specifically what companies are looking for now in CEO hires. It's not about strategy, financial management. It is about, and the technical skills of running a company. It's about, do you know how to get along with people, inspire people, influence people, make relationships work, and get everyone moving in the same direction? That 100% is the top skill to have now. So communication skills might have been nice to have before. They are an absolute must-have now. And I would say, even looking at my own business, the growth of my business in the last 2 years from the start of the pandemic, while most people were struggling, communication skills was number one. Everyone needed to know, how do we improve communication and engagement in our company? And it is 100%, I believe, the most important skill to have in leadership. You can't have leadership without strong communication and social skills. So, and now we have an HBR article to prove it, which is wonderful. But that's definitely the shift, is we're seeing we need the people skills, the human skills. The technical skills are a given, everyone has those. And now as we automate everything, AI can do just about everything for us now. So how do you stand out? You stand out because you're human, because you know how to create human relationships. So we don't need someone who can crunch numbers and do data analysis. Our computers do that for us. We need someone who knows how to make sense of that in a very human way so that we can be successful in the business.
For sure. What shortcomings are you seeing in American business leaders right now?
Oh, I think that's a big generalization. I don't think there's anything that's like 100% specific to an American leader versus others. I think one of the biggest challenges maybe American leaders are facing that they might not have faced before is that everything is becoming much more global. You could be sitting in my hometown, my little hometown of 300,000 people, which, okay, that's a decent sized city, but you could be sitting in your living room there and never leave, be born and raised and never leave your living room and work online. But suddenly the world is coming to you. And I think this is the case in all kinds of business, that we have suddenly, due to the pandemic and our ability to sit here and speak to each other across the world, we're becoming much more global. And in some cases, American leaders have not had that global experience and have not learned the skill of adaptability, which I think comes from cultural intelligence. And what we fail to realize is that cross-cultural intelligence is the same as interpersonal intelligence. So if I've learned how to deal with difference, and I've learned how to observe culture and read the room, and I've done that in multicultural settings, that's what I apply in my interpersonal relationships. It could be someone just down the street in my hometown. We could have very different perspectives of the world, even though we were born and raised in the same place. So I think we need a lot more training and learning in adaptability, in how we show up true to our values, and yet know how to be flexible and mold and meet people halfway. I think that's probably one of the big ones that's coming up. The next need that I see is an ability to be more vulnerable and show your full self at work. So drop the perfectionism and be willing to share the good and the bad and the ugly. And when you do that, you're encouraging others to do the same. And I think that's the other big shift we're seeing now, moving from I'm the leader, I'm perfect, I know all the answers, to I really don't know what to do here. Let me have your ideas. That's why I hired you. Bring me your ideas. I know you're brilliant. Let me lean on you, and let's make up an even bigger idea out of all of us. So I think those are the big challenges that not just American leaders, but everyone, but maybe the global experience factor for some American leaders may be a little bit newer, dealing with larger multicultural teams, even in small businesses, even in, you don't have to be a multinational to have international colleagues or vendors or suppliers or a web guy in another country. And, all the outsourcing that we do, you really do need to start honing these skill sets.
Right. Well, obviously, there's a prioritization to social skills, right, in leadership, and businesses, they're looking for those strong social skills. I think one of the challenges that I see would be interviewing for that. And the reason why is because so many people can make an interview work great. They can train themselves, they can prepare themselves for that interview. But that doesn't mean that that translates to when Bob comes to you with a mental health issue, or an entire team of people is struggling collaborating with the other group to get the widget built. And that to me is where you do need those really strong social skills, especially to create the culture, to make it dynamic, to make it efficient, to make it effective. But at the same time, how do you interview for that? How do you even search for that when you're looking at candidates? Because I think people interview really well and you can't
Mm-hmm.
really tell. And there's not a test, there's not an assessment.
No.
You
And I
know,
think the other challenge there in the interview side is how much bias plays into this. Because if you are the interviewer, it's very easy to fall into, oh, we just clicked, and oh, his social skills are so amazing, and we just got along so well. And then what you're actually doing is you're just falling into this bias trap of hiring someone just like you, which
Yep.
is not necessarily the best for the company.
Yeah.
And okay, you like this person, but is it going to be the right kind of leader? So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a great point that there's some big challenges here in how do you actually quantify this in some way, or know that this type of person will equate to those kinds of skills in the moment. I think that is really, really difficult. I don't have the answer for you on that, but
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to start finding ways of doing this. And I mean, there's all kinds of interview techniques that they have around the profiling and the brain teasers and the
Yeah.
a million things that should be giving you some kind of insight, right? But I don't think you really know until you see the person in action on the job, and then sometimes it could be too late if you made the wrong choice, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think right now a lot of business leaders are really struggling to kind of figure out what to do now, what's next look like. Do you have any advice for business leaders as kind of they figure out where to go from here?
Yeah, that's a great question. It reminds me at the very beginning of the pandemic, clients would call me and they would just say, Heather, I don't know what to do. What are your other clients doing right now? We'll do the same. It was like, what's everybody else doing? Just tell me what to do
Yeah.
and I'll do it. And we're still in that process.
Yeah.
I think right now it is putting, and it's been this throughout the pandemic, but I think even now as we're in this great resignation, great reawakening, whatever you would like to call it, depending on what side of the puzzle you are
Yeah.
on, leaders still need to have full focus on their people,
Yeah.
building and developing the relationships with their people at every level, showing up fully at work, sharing themselves with the company, getting comfortable with that, because for some it's a really big shift.
Mhm.
But if they think they can show up the same way that they were showing up 2 years ago, it's not going to work and they're going to lose their people. So they have to start checking in more often. They need to run those pulse surveys, find out the engagement levels, really get good data and feedback from the people as anonymously and clearly as possible so that they get a good view of what's really happening, because typically they don't really know what's being talked about over there in accounts and HR and in the corners. And now the corners are different living rooms and private Zoom calls, so it's even harder to get a feel for what the group energy is. So they really need to be shifting into full focus on their people, to build those relationships, have one-on-ones if they need to, get honest communication flowing, make sure their people are unmuting and voicing their opinions and contributing to the conversation. It's just 100% where they have to be focused now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I heard you say is that you need to allow people to have a voice and truly
Yeah,
listen, right?
exactly.
Because I think for so
Hmm.
long, people, you didn't have to empower people. You could
Yeah.
just continue doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
And now you need to enable them, let them know that they want to hear what they have to say, engage them, make the people that don't normally feel like they can speak at all, give them a platform to speak, right?
Exactly. Give them the
Yeah.
platform and the space to speak, and make sure that you acknowledge the contribution. I
Right.
think right now people more than anything want to feel that they belong and that they're working toward a common goal. And the leaders need to be completely focused on that, and acknowledging the contributions and making sure people feel heard. So I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, the purpose of Evolve is to enable leaders to learn, connect, and grow together. And Heather, thank you so much for spending your evening with me today. And we really appreciate all of you've contributed. And I love talking about communication. It's absolutely critical to any organization that's going to thrive. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a fun conversation. So thanks again.